Having founded one of the most successful motorsport constructors in the world, Adrian Reynard knew Formula One would be the ultimate test. His company, Reynard Racing Cars, won the first race of every major single-seater category it contested, before going on to win multiple titles in Formula 3, Formula 3000 and IndyCar. So when Adrian helped form British American Racing in the late 90s, the team arrived in Formula One with huge expectations.
We were the disruptors. That was our brand. So we automatically were expected to do really well. And I wasn't trained for interviews too much. So of course, yes. Well, our aim is to go in and we'll win the first race. Why not? I was a bit naive for Formula One. I didn't really know how to tackle all the PR. It was astounding how much publicity it got.
BAR never won a race, let alone their first one. But they did finish second to a very dominant Ferrari in 2004. They took 15 podiums, and Adrian helped lay the foundations for the team that would go on to become world champions, first as Brawn GP and then as Mercedes.
Seeing all the world championships come out of that mechanism. I mean, that's what I do. I design mechanisms, I employ people, I choose great engineers. If I have to look back on my achievements, I don't look at all the races we won and the championships we won. What I look at is all the people that went on to do great things, either with us or when we went bust with other teams.
Here on F1 Beyond the Grid, with me, Tom Clarkson, Adrian shares some of his memories from a thrilling life designing championship-winning cars and trying to crack Formula One. He talks about selling his house to create his own Formula One team in 1990 and how he helped to inspire legendary engineers like Rory Byrne and Pat Symonds. Then, after getting to Formula One with BAR, he recounts how he and Team Principal Craig Pollock had such a disagreement about the future of the team that he resigned. And there's more. Adrian also tells us how he designed the factories that would go on to become the headquarters of Mercedes and Alpine today. The part he played in the Benetton B192, the car in which Michael Schumacher won his first F1 race, and his up-and-down relationship with the late Eddie Jordan. Adrian's also happy to explain why the success he enjoyed with Reynard Racing Cars in every major championship outside of Formula One didn't quite translate to the top echelon. It's clear he loved the challenge, and I'm sure you'll enjoy his stories. Adrian, it is great to have you on the show. You're looking very well. How are things?
Things are good. Summer's here in England, which is enjoyable. So I'm relaxed. I've been racing at Cadwell Park, and I finished 4 races. Not as quick as I used to be, but I still enjoy doing it.
Hang on, elaborate. What were you driving, or were you riding? Because you also ride bikes, don't you?
Yeah, this was driving. In 1975, I designed and developed my first Formula 4 2000 car. And guess what? I've got a collection of them now. Some totally original. Ones there which I won my first race, championship race at Silverstone in. But this particular one I've recreated. So it's all made of new parts, apart from old engine, obviously, because they don't make the Pinto engine anymore. And I've raced it for the last 3 or 4 years. I was 5th in the championship in 2023, I think. Last year I slipped a bit because I didn't do all the races. If I can come in the top 6, I'm delighted. I'm not as quick as I used to be. I'm scoring points, but I'm not manic about doing every single race.
And also, you're passionate about 2 wheels, aren't you? Just looking around your kitchen here, there are certificates saying you're a land speed record holder on 2 wheels as well.
Well, that was when I was 19 and then 20. I went to Elvington again. When I sort of retired from motorsport, I decided it would be really cool to have another go at the same record. So I built myself a 250cc motorcycle. This time I've got a Honda engine in it, not a Royal Enfield. This time it's 4-stroke, it's got 4 cylinders, it revs to 19,000 RPM, and I've turbocharged it, and it's running on rocket fuel. We've got about 110 horsepower out of it at the moment, which is 3 times the amount I had. And the idea is to try and get as close to 200 miles an hour as possible at Elvington, same venue I was at in 1971-72.
Who's going to be riding?
Well, there's no real choice on that. I have to do it myself.
What does your family say to that?
I think my two sons are keen to have a go as well. Once I prove that I can get to close to 200, I'm not saying 200 is really difficult with a 250. The aerodynamic forces go up a lot. The engine power goes up of the cube of the speed. So it's a big challenge, and I don't want to keep developing this engine. It's already developing per litre the same amount as Formula One engines do. So we're doing very well. I don't want to burst the engine. The transmission is a limiting factor as well. I don't want to put too much power through that, power or torque. I'll do my bit, and then if my two sons, Sam and Max, want to have a go, they're welcome to it.
Adrian, your passion for motorsport and all things with an engine is still so infectious.
Well, that's what I talk to young people about. I teach a bit as a visiting professor at both Cranfield University and Oxford Brookes University. And passion is the one thing I say is an essential ingredient for them to have to follow a career in motorsport, because it's difficult. It's you need determination. You need a vision of where you want to be. And the passion, I guess I've still got it in a minor way. It's not a professional way. It's a very selfish way at the moment. But I enjoy still doing things, and I'm not quite sure what I'd do with my life if I didn't have something to focus on.
Sure. It begs the question, what interested you first about motorsport? Was it because you wanted to be a rider or a driver, or was it the design side?
I wanted to be a Formula One driver. There's no doubt about that. My father bought himself a go-kart when I was about 9, and he let me have a go in it at Stevenage Go-Kart Club, which was a field. So that's the only thing I've got in common with Lewis Hamilton. We both started go-karting in Stevenage about the same age, because I was about 9. And I do believe that starting young, I mean, it's no chance that there's so many good young drivers in Formula One today that started karting in their 6 to 8 year olds. And I think that's the body and the brain is so supple. It just absorbs all those automatic reflexes. So I'm sure that's why these guys are so fast.
When you were younger and you had a steering wheel in your hand, who was your hero? Who did you want to be like?
Well, my dad was an aircraft engineer, but he did see I was interested in motorsport, and he took me to the British Grand Prix in 1958. I was 7. I've got a picture standing next to Ivor Bueb's Connaught, which was in the paddock, grass paddock, and you were able to go and touch cars in those days as a 7-year-old. And I'm standing there with my lollipop looking at this car, funnily enough owned by one Bernie Ecclestone, who I was later to do business with later in my career. I remember coming home because Stirling Moss was in that race, and he obviously had an oil leak and his face was covered in black and his goggles are made of white imprint. And I remember going home and putting boot polish all over my face, apart from where goggles would be, and my mum was horrified because it took ages to get it off. I guess that's as much an inspiration as you can get. And I loved the feel, the noise, the vibrations, the people, the competitiveness, and I guess the cars as well. I had dinky toys. I've still got some Cooper 500s here, which I had at that age.
Right, so the initial attraction was driving. When did the design side, the engineering side, start to appeal?
Well, I couldn't afford to drive racing cars, so motorcycles were my start. So I did the World Land Speed Record thing when I was 18, 19 and 20. I then bought a Ginetta Formula Ford 1600 for £600 with a trailer and spare wheels and tyres and ratios. And I raced that and found all the deficiencies in flexible chassis and rubber-mounted suspension. So I spun that, crashed it quite a lot. But I guess I was still thinking, well, I think I could be a good driver. So after that, I was at Oxford Brookes University. It was Oxford Polytechnic in those days. And I combined my final year project for designing a Formula Ford car, which I designed and built either there or at a bit at British Leyland as well as a joint project. Finished that in 1973. It took me a whole year and all my budget. I'd sold the Ginetta to finance it. It cost me about £1,000 to build the whole thing. I took it to Silverstone And fortunately, all the top drivers were away at Brands Hatch in a championship race. So I had an easy time winning the first race in that car at Silverstone. I didn't realize at the time that that would set a precedent for the rest of my life.
It really did, didn't it?
Because I'd gone to Elvington and aimed to get all the world land speed records as a teenager, and I managed to get them. Then I designed and built my first racing car, and I won the first race. I had no idea that that was going to be the manual for the future of the company.
You won your first race in F3, in F3000, in IndyCar. We'll come on to all that later, but when you had a pen in your hand, I know it wasn't a pen, but and you were designing a car, if Sterling Moss was your hero as a driver, who was that equivalent?
Colin Chapman.
Okay,
Absolutely Colin Chapman.
what was it about Colin?
I just think he was a brilliant engineer. He started his own company. I'd gone up in my teens. As soon as I could drive, I went up to Hethel and I saw the second car he ever made, LK 102 or something registration it was. And that just inspired me to think, well, if he can do that as a 20-something-year-old, then I should be the same. So he was definitely my hero. And of course, there was Bruce McLaren as well, who was great because he drove the cars, which was still my aspiration, and he also had his own car construction company. So another one of my heroes. So both of them figured really highly.
And both of them had incredible reach. It wasn't just one championship, was it? It was a whole load of different cars.
No, they had a spectrum of talent. And fortunately, later in life, I was actually recruited to be a technical director at Lotus, which I had to turn down because Colin wanted me to stop my own company. But that's about as close as I got to Lotus. They were. I loved what he did. I loved the innovations he produced, and I thought he was great at collecting some really good people around him as well by making a great team.
Can we talk about Formula One now? It's been a while since you last worked in F1. Are you still across it? Let's start with that.
I watch every race, yes, of course. I think I got burned out a bit on the travel. Japan did me no favors when I had to go to Japan 18 times a year. And it was, economy travel and poor hotels, lack of sleep, and a challenge to win the Formula 3000 championship. So I didn't get the opportunity to go to any Formula One races when I had a Formula One team. But I still think the industry is great. I am so pleased that it's grown into what it has. It's beyond all expectations, the commercial side, and I'm sure Netflix has done it a power of good. So it's become a much more interesting spectacle than it used to be when good old Murray Walker would turn on and you'd get an hour's racing.
You know everyone in Formula One, but I think we can say you had three main cracks at it. And can we start with the most recent, British American Racing? How did you get involved with that?
It was through Jacques Villeneuve and Craig Pollock. Jacques had come up through Formula Atlantic in the States. They chose to run our IndyCar in 1995 and win the Indy 500. And Jacques was a championship driver. So that core belief in each other was founded because Jacques loved our car, he loved our team, the backup, he loved working with Barry Green in the States. Our successes were incredible, and because he was a rookie really for the IndyCar, but winning that was incredible. We've just celebrated 30 years since he won that. So a lot of belief was created, and Craig Pollock was doing a great job at that time promoting him, and he got a Williams drive out of it. And as you know, one way or the other, he became world champion in Formula One with Williams. He was obviously so talented, and Craig had done a great job in managing him. Funnily enough, I think that Jacques didn't enjoy his time at Williams as much as he had working with us. He said it wasn't a fun place to work. So the idea came about, and it was Craig's idea. I've got to give him credit. Let's build a Formula One team. He was already sponsored by players, so Craig had a good inlet with BAT. BAT was interested, and we tried to put together a Formula One team. It took longer than expected, so we actually missed a year. But in the meantime, I got motivated. I found a site in Brackley. I bought the site myself. I designed the Formula One headquarters and our own future for Reynard at the same site. So all that was going on automatically, but we missed the year. And in the end, we had to buy a team because BAT said, we don't want to go in like Jackie Stewart. We want points. We want to earn the points. So we have to buy an established team. And I think it was an insurance policy for them as well. So we were pressed to buy Tyrrell, which we did. BAT put money up, Craig put money up, Jacques put money up, and I put money up. So we bought Tyrrell. I think it was £25 million. And of course, not many people remember, but the same team won the Brawn World Championship and the Mercedes World Championship. It's the same company, the same team. So that's the Tyrrell heritage which has gone on.
This episode is sponsored by Babbel. If you've been putting off a dream trip because you're nervous about not being able to speak the language, don't sweat it. Babbel's got your back. Because learning a new language isn't just about ordering coffee or asking for directions. It opens doors to new experiences, new cultures, and even new friendships. And Babbel makes it easy. Their conversation-based method teaches you real-world phrases that you'll actually use. With over a dozen languages to choose from, including French, Spanish, Polish, and German, you can pick whatever suits your travel plans. And what I really like is how Babbel keeps you motivated with real-time feedback, progress trackers, and lessons voiced by native speakers. It's like having a private language coach in your pocket. In fact, studies have shown that just 15 hours of Babbel is equivalent to a full semester at college. And make sure you don't skip the excellent Culture Bites section. It's packed with insights that help you connect more meaningfully with people wherever you're going. I want you to learn another language, so I'm teaming up with Babbel to gift you 55% off subscriptions, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/grid. Get up to 55% off at babbel.com/grid, spelled BABBEL.com/grid. babbel.com/grid. Can I just take you back to when were the seeds of Formula One first sown? Is it during 95 when you were all still in IndyCar, or did it only happen once Jacques was in Formula One with Williams?
I think it was when he was in Formula One with Williams. Obviously, I'd had a couple of failed attempts at getting into Formula One, and although I was very confident of doing the technical bit, designing the car, doing the R&D, getting the efficiency right, getting the manufacturing flow charts and the procurement and suppliers all lined up, building the factory, I failed in my previous attempts at getting sponsorship and engine. This seemed to be a much better opportunity because with BAT we had, I think they put in 65 million of sponsorship in the first year. Craig was in charge of getting the balance because I think our budget was over 100 million. So with them underwriting most of the costs, I knew I could design and build the factory and supply and recruit and supply the technical staff and equip the factory with all the right equipment, the machinery, the R&D, do the aerodynamics, etc., etc. So I was confident about that, and that's really what kicked it off.
You say you were delayed a year. Why was that, and which year? So you wanted to come in 98?
Yeah. I think it was just a big deal for BAT to underwrite. It took time. And, credit to Craig, he tried really hard to get this thing through. And if it wasn't for Craig, this wouldn't have happened. So although we did fall out later on, he owns a lot of credit for getting this set up.
I remember you guys being the disruptors.
Yeah.
The build-up was sort of marred by sort of political controversy of, first of all, the liveries. Do you remember you wanted to put each car in its own livery?
Yeah.
And the FIA didn't want that. I remember Article 151C, bringing the sport into disrepute, was being bandied around. How much of a distraction was all of that when you were just trying to get a racing team up and running?
It didn't distract me at all, but it probably distracted the team. And I thought that livery was really clever. And I think it's probably one of the best liveries ever on a Formula One car, that split livery. It will go down in history, I believe. But there was a lot of politics. Yes, we were the disruptors. There's no doubt that the win every race first time, whether I said it or whether Craig said it, I don't know. But we were bandied. That was our brand. So we automatically were expected to do really well. And, I wasn't trained for interviews too much. So, of course, yes. Well, our aim is to go in and we'll win the first race.
I remember you saying, why not?
Why not?
Why not?
Well, yes, that's probably a good answer.
That put a lot of pressure on your back.
Of course, but I was a bit naive for Formula One and the publicity it generated. I was trained with BAT about smoking. I remember the interviewer said, "Look, I'm going to train you for smoking. So one of your first questions is, do you smoke, Mr. Reynard?" And I said, "No, but I'm trying to take it up." And that was the end of the interview. She didn't want to ask me any more questions because I was trying to support BAT, but I didn't really know how to tackle all the PR, and it was astounding how much publicity it got.
And did you have the support of F1 ringmaster Bernie Ecclestone?
I never spoke to Bernie at this time. This was purely a Craig Pollock thing. I just did the technical stuff. I was the backroom boy, designing the site, machinery, hiring the people, getting the facilities right. That was my role. And as I said, I never went to any of the races when it was Tyrrell. And I think I might have been to one test event at Jerez the following year. But Craig, unfortunately, rationed the passes and I wasn't on the list.
How can the technical director not be going to races?
Well, that's a good question.
Jacques qualified 11th in Melbourne, race number 1, and then he retired, I think, with a rear wing issue from the race. Just tell us about that car and what you learned from it.
We learnt that the engine that we were using vibrated very differently than the test mule that we'd been running. So we hadn't anticipated all the vibrations and things vibrated off. It wasn't just the rear wing, it was all sorts of brackets and things. So we hadn't done enough durability testing, and that plagued us all year. Once you get behind the curve in Formula One, it is relentless. It's so difficult to catch up because testing is limited. So we were plagued with unreliability in our first year.
And that was the Renault V10, or badged a Super Tech at the time,
Correct,
wasn't it?
Yes.
You then change engines. I think we've worked out why.
Why did you think we changed
Well,
engines?
because of the vibrations and, the lack of reliability. Was that the motivating force?
You mean
to
when we
switch?
went to Honda? We'd done a good job with Honda, and this is definitely my input. I'll take the credit for it. Mr. Osaka, who was head of IndyCar racing, we'd blown away teams in the States. Honda, when they went into IndyCar, didn't have a reliable engine. They didn't have good success with Bobby Rahal. When we came in, they were different. They had the best engine. We won championships. We won races. So Mr. Osaka thought, this is a good guy. When I mentioned to him we wanted to do Formula One, I think we were in pole position. So I went over to Japan. I was hosted. I went round their factories, talked to them, and hey presto, we got our Formula One deal. And also Eddie Jordan was trying to get the same works deal, but we convinced them to give us the works deal. The engine wasn't quite as good as we hoped. It was a bit overweight, well, quite a lot overweight, actually. We didn't have the best power, but it was an interesting technical challenge.
And a massive step forward in terms of results. There were 4th places in 2000. And, when you think about it, in year 2 of a brand new Formula One team, to be finishing just off the podium is actually a huge achievement.
I do think about that these days, I have to say. When you look at Haas that came in, I know they're doing better now, but when you look at a new team, or even older teams like Sauber, we didn't do too badly, really, in perspective. But of course, we didn't live up to the reputation or the expectations which were created. So the press didn't do us any good. And then, of course, my relationship with Craig was falling apart, which didn't help either.
When did that start to happen? When did you start to perhaps reduce your involvement in the team?
I basically felt that Craig was blaming me for being over budget, overspending, when he would spend lots of money on buses, which they were great buses. I have to say, I got the blame for overspending the budget on technical side. It was a rivalry between us, and it was not a good situation. So I decided to resign as technical director, put Malcolm in there, who had more experience of the actual design engineering. He was going to the track, and he was doing a great job. So I basically resigned. I went on to keeping the site going, running the back. I was the backstream technical boy. I remember trying to suggest we should put ISDN lines in between our factory and the track, so that we don't need to send so many. We were lacking on passes, which was maybe justified that I wasn't going to get a pass. But we could not send so many technical people if we had real-time data acquisition between the track and the factory. And that was probably pioneering what is now, you got 25, 30, 40 people at home making decisions these days.
Mission control
yeah,
of
exactly.
every factory.
Yeah.
Malcolm Osler was the guy you just mentioned.
Yes.
He came in as technical director. Tell us about his history with you and why you thought Malcolm was the right guy.
I love recruiting young people. It was one of the most pleasurable things I did. We never used to advertise, so I would take 10 or 15 young people from college and hire them, basically. But Malcolm wrote to me from Australia. He came over. I wasn't at the factory at the time for his interview. And I said to Ian Ashdown, who's in charge of recruitment at that says, I said, this is what I want you to do. I want you to hire him and then interview him, which was exactly the opposite for most people. So I was that sure that I wanted to hire Malcolm Osler.
How could you be that sure?
I was sure. He was the guy. And he proved absolutely that person. His CV was a brochure, a folder, rather than just the 2 pages. He was just perfect. He'd designed his own Formula Ford car. He'd driven it. He'd raced it. His engineering degree was much higher qualified than mine. His drawings were great. He was very modest. He was a great team player, totally empathetic with all the young engineers that I'd brought in. So he embraced that. I remember one Andrew Green, who went on to become obviously famous technical director at Jordan and then Aston Martin. And Andrew came in. He was meant to go around the factory to do 3 or 4 weeks in every department, but he ended up next to Malcolm. And Malcolm obviously recognised him as someone with talent. I said, look, Andrew's meant to be going around every department. And Malcolm says, just leave him with me. And that was that.
I think you could see a lot of yourself in Malcolm Osler.
Yeah, well, he's just better than me. I had to multitask. I had to drive my cars. I had to design my cars. I had to procure the parts. I was the buyer. I was assembler. I had to sell them as kits. I had to deal with the team. I had to sell them. I had to race against my customers. I didn't do everything really, really well because there was a whole spectrum of challenges I had. Malcolm, he was the designer, and he could concentrate and focus on design, development, telling me where my stupid ideas were, and maybe embracing some which weren't so bad.
Well, and the podiums then came, and as you said a little bit earlier, the foundations were laid for what then became Brawn Grand Prix and that huge success that Mercedes had in the last decade or so. Do you still take a little bit of pride out of the success that Mercedes are having? Do you feel that you were a cog in that wheel?
That's all I've got left. That's all I've got left is the memories. Of course, I mean, buying the site and developing it was great. Seeing all the World Championships come out of that mechanism. I mean, that's what I do. I design mechanisms. I employ people. I choose great engineers. I empower them for what they do. So if I have to look back on my achievements, I don't look at all the races we won and the championships we won. I'm not the one on the podium. What I look at is all the people that we cultured and embraced that went on to do great things either with us or when we went bust with other teams and have gone on to do excellent things. I mean, I think it's 7 Formula One technical directors we spawned during our time there. Recently, I met Andy Cowell at an MIA event, and I didn't recognise him. And he said, "Do you remember you gave me my first job?" And I said, "Well, actually, I didn't, Andy. But he said, yeah, well, I went to you, and then because of you, because my time with you, I got a job at Cosworth afterwards. So I don't think he stayed long with us. But
Well,
it's nice to
do you
know.
what, Andy told me that story on this very podcast earlier in the year. Yeah, no, big thanks to you. Look, you mentioned a little bit earlier about your first attempt to have your own F1 team. That came in 1990. Just with the benefit of hindsight and knowing how difficult Formula One was when you had the might of BAT behind you, how do you view what you were trying to do back in 1990 with your own team, with your own money, self-financed?
I look at that as a brave attempt which failed because I wasn't Eddie Jordan. Eddie Jordan could probably have made that work if I'd have partnered up with him then, because he was such a successful person at getting funding behind him. I was just a technical guy. So I had the dream. I looked at the mechanisms and the mechanical parts. I bought a site, a farm building. I demolished the buildings. I designed Formula One headquarters, which is now Alpine. I bought that. I put together a team of 22 young people that I thought were really great at doing their jobs. One was Rory Byrne, one was Pat Simmons, Dave Wass. There was everyone,
so much talent.
Everyone was there, talented and inspired. And I gave them a year to design and build. We did a model. We did a wind tunnel model, tested at Imperial College. It was one of the very early high-nose Formula One cars. We did active ride on it, which of course was banned later. Pat Simmons did that. It was excellent aerodynamically, and we got everything except the engine. So I couldn't get an engine for it, and that really killed it. But the lack of sponsorship was there as well. Even if I'd had an engine, I'd have had to rely on an engine manufacturer to do the finance. So after spending a lot of money, and I had to sell my house, and I had to sell a lot of very nice things I had acquired at the time, it all came to nothing, and I let them go. The only satisfaction I gave that, again, just from the people, because all those 20 people were recruited by Benetton because John Barnard had just left, and I was pleased for them to take whatever technology and whatever they'd learned and drawings to Benetton, and that became the essence, I believe, of the Benetton B192, which became very successful Formula One. So, satisfaction, in some bizarre way, I got some satisfaction out of that.
That Benetton you talk about was Schumacher's first win at Spa in 1992. But how close did Reynard F1 get to becoming a reality? You say you had the wind tunnel model up and going. You've talked about the engine and the money. Was there a moment where you thought, yes, I've got this?
I don't know. I've never thought about it. I sort of blank these things out of my mind. I don't think too much about failures. I think failures are very important to have in your life because you learn so much more from them. But why it failed, lack of sponsorship was one thing. And certainly, I'd spoken to Bernie. I went to see him in his office, and he was very encouraging. But encouraging from Bernie is still, okay, where's the money, Adrian? That was the factor I didn't have covered.
You said if you'd been a little more EJ, did you talk to EJ about it? Because at the time, you were dominating F3000 with Eddie Jordan. You knew him well.
Yeah, I sort of fell out with Eddie because he recruited three of the best guys, my entire Formula 3000 staff, Gary Anderson, Mark Smith, and Andrew Green, all of whom went on to be technical directors of Formula One teams in their own site. So they weren't a bad recruit for me. And he just took them one month after another. And then the following year, we had a pretty poor Formula 3000 season as a result of it. And I didn't speak to Eddie for years. We subsequently became best mates again, and we laugh a lot about it, or we laughed a lot. But it was tough, but he was relentless about sponsorship and money, and he had those talents that I didn't have.
Just imagine if you two had worked together.
Well, we did think about it, but it never happened. I had Rick, of course, who was my...
Rick Gorn?
Yeah, Rick Gorn was my fantastic entrepreneurial salesperson. He was more than that. He was business development. He was great with customers. And he just caused the company to take off in sales. And we had an amazing few years together, or many years together. And we were part of a great team. But of course, Rick didn't have the experience getting sponsorship either. But he was great at selling cars, I can tell you.
You talked about Rory Byrne, Pat Simmons, all those people going to Benetton and sort of forming the technical cluster that took that team on to great things. What happened to the wind tunnel model that you made? Because I read somewhere that you sold it to Ligier. Is that true?
It is true. It's funny, really.
Yes. Turned a quick buck, maybe.
Yes. Well,
I think you've got a lot of EJ in you, actually.
I was really underwater. I mean, we lived in a beautiful house at the time, which I had to sell. And we ended up living in a 3-bedroom semi in Oxford, which my boys will remember, had no carpets. It went to Ligier. I sold it for £400,000 on the basis that it was a trial. They'd pay more if it increased the efficiency in their wind tunnel. So we flew down there. I witnessed the test. Then I came back. And in the end, they said, well, it doesn't come up to scratch, so we're not paying you the final amount. Funnily enough, they'd sent the check for the final amount, so I did get my £400,000 for it.
But how did that whole experience in 1990-91 change your attitude to Formula One?
I guess I knew then of my weaknesses were the commercial side, and I basically put it to bed and thought, well, I had to focus on my production car company. I had to focus on Formula 3000, Japan, and out of that came with discussions with Rick. We said, look, we've got to go into IndyCar. That failure for Formula One just fueled the desire to do IndyCar as a production racing car manufacturer. And it was the correct decision. So I put aside Formula One and went into something I thought we would be more successful with.
Indeed you were. Winning your first race in 1994, you were the dominant person, weren't you? And you even persuaded Roger Penske to close his own design facility in Dorset in the UK to take your cars. That's how good you were.
Yeah, we were good. We were very good. And it's sort of the most satisfying commercial. I mean, we were making a lot of money as well out of it. So the company was very successful. Rick and I were working really well. And it was just, we went over to live in America. I took the family over there in Indianapolis to build relationships. We built relationships with Ford and Chrysler. We got work from them. So it was a great decision, and we were back on track. I paid off all my debts, and we just went on to try and win every single race and every championship.
This episode is sponsored by Vanta. In Formula One, trust between the team and the driver is paramount, and business isn't so different. Whether it's securing a new partnership or landing a big deal, companies need to prove they can be trusted. But building that trust often means tackling the time-consuming and complicated task of compliance. Vanta makes it automatic. I love how Vanta makes it easy for businesses to get compliant fast and stay that way. They help companies show they take security and compliance seriously without drowning in spreadsheets or dragging audits out for months. Whether you're a startup working through your first SOC 2 or ISO 27001, or a bigger team managing vendor risk, Vanta makes the process quicker, simpler, and scalable. You can automate compliance across more than 35 frameworks, fly through security questionnaires up to 5 times faster, and let it all run quietly in the background while you focus on growing your business. According to a recent IDC study, Vanta customers save over $500,000 a year in costs and are 3 times more productive thanks to its industry-leading AI, automation, and continuous monitoring. Visit vanta.com/grid to sign up for a free demo today. That's vanta.com/grid. There's more to come from Adrian in a moment, but I just wanted to let you know about the other official F1 podcasts you can listen to this week. On F1 Nation's review of the Belgian Grand Prix, I'm joined by ESPN presenters Albert Fabregas and Juan Fosseroli to discuss how Oscar Piastri got the better of Lando Norris at Spa and what new Red Bull team principal Laurent Mekies will take away from his first race weekend in charge. And F1 President and CEO Stefano Domenicali answers your questions on the latest episode of F1 Explains. Both of those shows are out now. Just search for F1 Nation and F1 Explains on your podcast app.
How difficult is it to design a car that one week is going to be doing 240 miles an hour on an oval, the next week it'll be on a street course, the week after that it'll be on a permanent road course? They have to be so versatile, don't they?
Well, my view was it's all about aerodynamics. You could change the springs and the roll bars and the ride heights and the cross weights and things like that. But my view was focus on aerodynamics. And I think people like Red Bull and McLaren and Mercedes in the past have proven that aerodynamics are the overriding performance gainer in modern racing cars. So I designed and built myself a wind tunnel in America, the first one of its type. It was an open jet type, which was pioneering that sort of technology, which is now used all the time in Formula One. So it wasn't constrained. So I had a more compact wind tunnel, but it allowed a very large model in it because the airflow wasn't constrained by the walls. So I designed and built that, took it to America, and we then had something which I will call perpetual motion of performance enhancement, because we not only designed and built our own wind tunnel models and developed our cars, but then our customers wanted their own models. So we sold them models of our car. It was the most profitable car we ever made. We sold them for £100,000, and I think they cost about £12,000 to make. And then they came to us and paid us to test the models in our own wind tunnel. So it was a virtuous circle of profitability and development. So, and of course, at the end of the year, then it wasn't just our own aerodynamic team which came up with ideas. We had 6 or 7 customer teams, all with their own development engineers, thinking about ways of making our car quicker by paying our wind tunnel. And then at the end of the year, we could observe all the advantages, incorporate them into our next model. It was just domination.
Clearly you were a brilliant engineer, but were you an even better businessman?
Well, on the basis that I lost my business at the end, maybe not. There's no doubt that at some stage, when I got Malcolm, I had total confidence in delegating, more like empowering, the design and development aspects to Malcolm. So I became more of a businessman and focused on building the business and making money. So the way I structured the business was important in that all the assets were in my pension fund. I focused on supply chain efficiencies, because when you have 25 cars racing round and 10 of them go off on a high-speed oval, there's not a lot left of those cars, but they want to be racing again 2 weeks later. So you have to have a supply chain which is able to supply all the parts for 10 or 12 cars that have been written off in 2 weeks' time. And I didn't want to have all those parts in my stores. Also, every year I wanted to develop new, better cars, so I didn't want to have redundant parts by overstocking at the end of the year. So it was looking at all those parameters and figuring out how we could make things just in time at very efficient levels to provide the customers satisfaction and make a lot of money out of it.
Just in time. It sounds very Toyota, actually.
Yes, of course it was. And I did study the Toyota method, and we had to craft that to our own regimes. And I did it really by, employing great people like Peter Morgan, who unfortunately died last year. But we trained our suppliers so that they'd either hold the stock or they'd hold manufactured parts. And whether it was a Honda gearbox or a Mercedes gearbox, they would hold the castings. And then when the accident came and the gearbox got cracked, we could say, make a Mercedes gearbox casing. They machined it within a day. We assembled it within a day. We shipped it within a day. And that was probably our most difficult task. It was a very special supply chain management thing, which eliminated all the redundant parts at the end of the year. It allowed us to progress, because I didn't want to modify the cars. If we had 100 wishbones in stock. I didn't want to make a different type of wishbones, particularly economically.
You're juggling a lot.
Yes, that's where I was focusing in those latter years.
Right, can we now take you back to you, the engineer, and your first foray into Formula One? 1980, March, your chief engineer, I think Rupert Keegan was your driver at the time.
He was.
You were using an old Williams, actually, weren't you?
Yes. Rupert had a lot of faith in me. He was a fantastic guy, and we'd been together at Hawke. He drove for John McDonald in his Ram team, and he had no confidence in John or whoever talking to him when he came into the pits. He said, look, I want Adrian. So I remember going to Brands Hatch with him and reviewing, this is Formula One. I've never done Formula One before, didn't know anything about it. And I remember saying to Rupert, look, Rupert, when you go into paddock, the faster you go around paddock, the more downforce you get and the more grip you get. And he said, yeah, okay, fine. So it was those sorts of naive suggestions, but it gave Rupert confidence, and he knocked massive amounts of time off by just having the confidence. Of course, the car had to be set up well, but that was my first foray into Formula One. And then John McDonald, who I love him, and he was great with me. And again, he gave me a chance as a young 29-year-old to go in as technical director on his March Formula One team, which I thought was a real privilege and showed great faith.
What did you learn, age 29, that you were able to carry for the rest of your career?
Huge amount. I mean, absolute huge amount. It wasn't just the technology, but obviously we had a pseudo Williams to deal with. I mean, March had actually copied the Williams and used some probably thinner skins that they should have done on the monocoque. And then they'd remade it before I got there using thick skins and ended up having a car which was about 45 kilos overweight. So knowing Newton's laws, I said, well, the first thing we need to do is the easiest way to get performance is get weight off these things. So recognizing these things early. I mean, these days, it's a disgrace if you're 5 kilos overweight in Formula One. So I went through the car without weakening it. I had to re-engineer and take weight out. So I did that by redesigning gearbox parts and simplifying and lacking big oil cooler runs, eliminating those and making them better, reducing certain weights, using carbon fiber, so it was my first experience with carbon fiber. That taught me a huge amount using carbon fiber. We got a lot of weight out with that. And then aerodynamics. I was able to go, with John's permission, I went to Myra. Not great these days probably, but it taught me a lot about overcar aerodynamics, cooling. I knew that overcooling wasn't good because it created drag. We played around with skirts, got those working much better than they had. So I learned a lot about tyres as well. And I still believe tyres are such an important factor. We had no choice we did have choice eventually with tyres. It was either Pirelli or Avons. But these days, of course, the tyres, you get what you're given.
You then took all that experience into Reynard and dominating the junior formulas for the next decade.
I left. March was just over the road. I mean, I could walk to my own factory, so I kept my own factory going. But I did design a really aerodynamic Formula Ford car out of that in late 81. In 82, we went to the Formula Ford Festival. I think we came third with James Weaver. But that set new standards because, boy, it was difficult to win the Formula Ford Festival. But we came really close. And then I persuaded Rick to join me. And Rick said, well, I'll join you, but don't ever do Formula One again, which, of course, we did together in the end. But that was a really successful beginning of a successful production racing car company. We made hundreds of those Formula Fords, and they're still quite well respected today. I've got one in my garage over there, which I've kept, and went on to basically start to redominate in Formula Ford 2000, built a new car, won the first race with that as well. Formula 3 came after that with carbon fibre.
It's been an extraordinary career. You've won so much. I did just want to talk about drivers now. Who is the fastest driver that you've ever worked with?
Well, let me change the question a bit. The most complete, which is what I respect, Gilles de Ferran was the complete perfect person. because he not only had an engineering degree, he could also drive the cars quickly. He was great with the team, and he would virtually do the engineering for me. He'd come into the pits and tell me the adjustments he'd want on the car. I didn't need to ask him, what's it doing? He would come in. So he was an absolute joy, and he raced with me in, well, I'm rebuilding a replica tribute car of his Formula Ford 1600 now, his 89 car, which will be ready in next month. He then came to me in Formula 3, Formula 3000. He won the Formula 3 championship in 92 in Formula 3000, and then went on into IndyCar. We got him into IndyCar with Jim Hall, and then, of course, I helped him into Roger Penske personally. Rick did most of the driver training, but Jill and Roger was one of my moves. And he just was fantastic in every way, and a lovely, lovely person.
Definitely a lovely person. He's the most complete, but who could turn a lap in quali that no one else could, even if it was just that one lap?
Okay, John Pratt in Formula Ford, I have to say, going back that far, if you really want someone, because that's when I was noticing. I stepped back from my race engineering in Formula 3000. So, Christian Fittipaldi, I had great admiration for the way he won his championship, I remember. And of course, Johnny Herbert was great as well. He had a curtailed season in my car because of his leg damage, but he was great as well. John Pratt was great because he was overweight. He was too big for the car. He was too tall. So I knew he was carrying that penalty with him. So he was just an outstanding person.
What did he go on to do?
I think he stopped at Formula 3, and he now runs a very good driver training session company at Silverstone. So he's still very much into driver training, and I'm sure he's still a very quick driver.
Talking of training, I did want to ask you, and you say that you have an involvement still with Oxford Brookes and Cranfield. Formula One wants to be more diverse, particularly in the fields of engineering. How does the sport and how does the world persuade more girls to get involved in engineering as teenagers?
I'm a fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering, and one of my tasks has been to sit on a panel to judge the worthy recipients of the Mission 44 charity that Lewis has set up. I've interviewed hundreds of young engineers, and I have a traditional view on what aspirations they need to have and what qualities they should show. I expect if someone's interviewed, they've at least been to a race. They maybe participated in go-karting. They've certainly worked on racing. They've got dirty hands. But a lot of these, they haven't had that privilege. That was one aspect. I had to change my filters to accommodate people that got their first degree, they got their qualifications, they qualified for Mission 44, but they needed to further preparation, which was whether they go to Oxford Brookes or Loughborough or Southampton or Cranfield. The diversity, I think the women, you've got to look at Rosie Waite, for example, the strategist for Mercedes. She's incredibly good. She won my Institution of Mechanical Engineers Prize a couple of years ago because of her amazing brain power and strategies that she was able to bring to Mercedes Formula One. But certainly you need different thinking. The more different thinking you can get into a Formula One team, I think the better it is, because it's an amalgamation. You've got 1,000 people all having a contribution these days. And certainly there are a lot of women in strategies that do extremely well. And women engineers, great, absolutely fantastic. When I talk to these young people, I say, do you know where the word engineer comes from? And of course, nobody does. They think engine? No. It's actually from the French. It's from ingénieur. And the French word for ingénieur doesn't mean a technical person. It means an ingenious person. So the engineer is an ingenious person. That's the title. So when I talk to young engineers, I say, your duty is to be ingenious. That's what you signed up to be. And women have a different ingenuity, no doubt. Their upbringing is probably different and they've got a different perspective. We need everything in Formula One and motorsport.
And throwing it forward from a technology point of view, Where do you stand on hydrogen and the new technologies? Do you think Formula One should be investigating them?
I love hydrogen. I recently went to JCB to look at their engine plants, and it's very impressive. It's still naive, tomorrow, the future is hydrogen tomorrow, but it's not there today. So there's still some contaminants coming out of burning hydrogen. The nitrogen doesn't come out very well, so you still get some emissions. But the main challenge is the production of it using green electricity and the storage of it and then putting it in cars. I mean, it's impractical. I mean, Pat Simmons did his thesis at Cranfield on hydrogen engines 25 years ago, and I was with him last week, and he says it's still impractical. You'd have to do, I don't know what he said, 24 fuel stops to do a Grand Prix or something like that, because it's so difficult. Its energy density is not so good. So it's a future. I'd love to have it. More so, I'd love to have the internal combustion engine continuing in motorsport. I've never watched a Formula E race, either been there or on television. I would have no interest in that. Having said that, I've got 3 electric cars outside, and I love electric cars, and all of them are powered by my solar farm just over there.
But do you think Formula One needs to move with the times? If car manufacturers are interested in electric, does Formula One need to reflect that?
I think there is a change. You could say in the past disc brakes were born out of Formula One and motor racing. I'm not sure what is born out of Formula One now, which is of any use to a production car. I think it's just different. It has gone its own path. But the only thing which I think could be transferable is the people. I think you take a Formula One engineer and put him into a production car environment, then I think they would very much improve it, and maybe to do an Elon Musk type thing with Tesla, where they've rewritten the book on production cars. But my own personal view, I'd love the internal combustion engine to continue. It's got to carry on with sustainable fuel. The sustainable fuel has to be made economically, sustainably, which there's, I know just over the road here in Bicester Motion, Paddy is doing some great stuff on sustainable fuels. But
Paddy
it's not,
Lowe.
Yeah, Paddy Lowe. But it's not economic yet. But it's a challenge, and this is what the young engineers have to face. Please get hydrogen into a more usable form, better storage, better density, better everything. Maybe it can then be used, but it's not going to be in the next few years. There needs to be an interim solution, and I think the internal combustion engine, obviously, is what the F1 want the internal combustion engine to continue. They just have to use a sustainable fuel.
Adrian, this has been such an enjoyable chat. Thank you very much for your time. Can I end it what I call the traditional way? Because, of course, this is the 75th anniversary of Formula One. And this final question I ask all of my guests on the pod. Do you have a best memory or a best moment in the history of F1? It doesn't have to be about your career. It could be anyone or anything.
Best moment. I suppose it is going to Silverstone in the 70s and watching Jackie Stewart race. I think he went through a ploughed field in this particular event when I was there.
He was racing Jochen Rindt.
Was he? Right. That to me was the most enjoyable. I wasn't in the business then. I was just starting, not knowing anything. I probably just started my company. But I really enjoyed the event. Jackie Stewart was my hero. He's become a really great friend. So that to me was great Formula One, great competition. I also witnessed that a multi-car pile up there, which I think was Scheckter.
73,
which of course was good because nobody got hurt. But that was really enjoyment for me. There was no strings attached. I wasn't under any pressure. I was just there to enjoy the event.
Adrian, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tim.
You're not alone, Adrian. Who can forget the start line crash at Silverstone in 1973? The carnage went on, and thankfully, no one was seriously hurt. I thought this was a remarkable conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. Adrian still has so much energy and so much enthusiasm for the sport, and I learnt a lot. His experiences with March in 1980, aged just 29. The commercial reasons behind why his own F1 team didn't work out. And the extraordinary tale of BAR. I remember the launch of the team on the eve of the 1999 season very well. We were gathered in a tent, listening to BAT boss Martin Broughton, Team Principal Craig Pollock, Adrian, and the drivers Jacques Villeneuve and Ricardo Zonta. There was such a buzz. As Adrian says, they were the disruptors, and they were fascinating. It was also really interesting to hear Adrian's thoughts on how to persuade more women to get into engineering. At the end of 2024, Formula One announced that a new formal diversity and inclusion charter had been agreed by all 10 F1 teams, F1 and the FIA. The charter was created with the support of the Royal Academy of Engineering, which Adrian is a fellow of, and its implementation is supported by F1 partner Mission 44, the charity set up by Lewis Hamilton that Adrian mentioned. Formula One has introduced fully funded engineering scholarships for unrepresented groups, apprentice and intern schemes, and the trailblazing F1 Academy. And the charter is all about keeping that momentum and continuing to maximise diversity across the sport, which, as Adrian says, is crucial because we need people with different ways of thinking and different perspectives to keep growing. If you want to find out more about the charter, click on the link in the episode description. Well, that's almost it for now. Thank you, Adrian, for your time, and thank you for listening. As always, I'll be back next week with another great guest from the world of Formula One. I hope you'll join me then. F1 Beyond the Grid is produced by Formula One and Audio Boom Studios. Until next time, keep it flat out.